part, or the next question, goes with 9.02 in the subportion B that says behavior analysts conducting applied research conjointly with provision of clinical or human services must comply with requirements for both intervention and research involvement by client participants. When research and clinical needs conflict, behavior analysts prioritize the welfare of the client. Please describe this process for you so that those of us who might be interested in research know what this might look like and what to look out for.
Yeah. So for that one, I honestly, whenever I was in grad school, a lot of what the professors kind of guided us through it and sometimes did some of the steps, especially whenever we had grants and things involved. But I do know, like, when you're in a university, you have to get that IRB approval. So going through that process and making sure you include all the valuable information for that committee to make, a good decision on whether it is a good research to do and it's ethical. And then you also have, depending on what centers you're going to, some centers have a human rights committee or a peer review committee. So making sure you go through those processes to make sure that you can do the research in that center. So making sure not only you're covering, like, if you're doing a university, but if you're going to other centers as well, you're complying with their regulations.
And we have one here that I enjoy going to, the PRC. It's really fun to go and see what everybody in the whole clinic is doing, not just our portion. So the next part, or the next question, goes with C of subcode 9.02. Behavior analysts conduct research competently and with due concern for the dignity and welfare of the participants. And the question is, has there ever been a time when you felt like a client of yours was having to participate in something that you did not feel was beneficial to them?
So I think that one gets into a very tricky situation because sometimes people don't realize, the purpose of, the research. So I could say that at first, whenever I was in grad school, one of the students were doing a research project, and I was iffy on why that would be beneficial for the participant, because they were using irrelevant pictures, or they're using, for example, they were teaching them tags, but they were using words that were not even words. So how would that be something beneficial for the client in the long run? But once I knew more about the research, they were more looking at, like, the method of it. So they were looking at, like, using, expressive versus receptive, or just the process of the error correction procedure. So the purpose of the research was more finding a good method for that participant. So again, in the long run, it was good for them,
right,
even though they had to use these irrelevant pictures just to, take out those biases and those variables that could confound why one method would work compared to the other method. So I haven't really found anything that would not be beneficial to the participant, but I could see how some people might see it as that, not knowing what the main purpose of the research was.
Right. You have to dig a little deeper sometimes to find out.
Yeah.
So the next portion goes still with subcode 9.02. Portion D, behavior analysts plan their research as to minimize the possibility that the results will be misleading. How might someone create a research plan that is not inherently misleading? And can you give us some examples of good research questions that don't assume or contain bias?
Yeah, so I think that you should always be planning to minimize stuff, but sometimes you can plan really well and still miss things that could be considered misleading, right? That you should be continuously seeking feedback throughout the entire process, and that means from supervisors and other people, having them read your plan, having them play like devil's advocate and saying, could this be interpreted a different way, or how would you read this, or what do you think other people are going to say? And then I think sometimes people talking about feedback can be kind of defensive about their projects because they see it as their baby. But I think that's not the time or place to be doing that. You should not be prideful or just trying to get published. It should be that you really are trying to minimize things that can come off the wrong way. So I think obviously seeking feedback, asking people, making sure you're just doing the right thing. And on that note, I think that sometimes things going wrong can be seen as a failure, but in this sense, it's something just that needs to be And then, the second part of your question. Yeah, so I thought that was an interesting question. I really don't have a great answer for it or a specific answer. I think I would just refer you to JAVA, so the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis, for people that may not know that, and look at articles from most of them, but particularly from people that we would consider highly ethical in our field or do a lot of stuff with ethics. So that might be a good place to start.
Very cool. Okay, so we're still on subcode 9.02, section F. If an ethical issue is unclear, behavior analysts seek to resolve the issue through consultation with independent formal research review boards, peer consultations, or other proper mechanisms. Have you ever been part of a research project where you had to make this kind of an ethical decision? Describe your process.
Yes. So I was part of a research that basically included low-income families. So at the beginning, we didn't have this part of our proposal, but what happened is that a lot of them would not be able to come to the meetings, or it was kind of a high response effort for them. It was a very long study where we needed some of the participants to stay with us for a long period of time. So we came up with having an incentive, but it was a money incentive. So you have to kind of think about making sure that you have procedures in place to be able to be ethical about that, and not providing money and in a way that it was more of like now you really have to be in the study because now we're providing money for you. So we had to make sure that the way that we presented it, as well as the way that we were doing it, was ethical and fair for all the participants that were doing it, and we're not favoring one participant over the other participant, and we had really good procedures to say why we were going to be using those incentives. Part of the question is that making sure we have to go back into the IRB approval and all that kind of stuff to make sure the community as a whole thought of it as something that would be ethical, not just us, but getting it approved.
Right. Very cool. Okay, the next part goes with G. Behavior analysts only conduct research independently after they have successfully conducted research under a supervisor in a defined relationship. What was your primary research topic and population? And if you did branch out on your own research, can you give us any advice that you might feel is important?
Yeah, so for me, my primary research topic was kind of like family training in general, so with parents. Basically, I speak both English and Spanish, so I kind of branched out to the Spanish-speaking families. I've never branched on my own in terms of outside of my grad school experience, but we did have to do our own project. So I did this big project with one of my professors that included a lot of family training. So in my project, I kind of branched out with the same kind of methods. It was a pyramidal training idea. So I did that instead of with parents, like Spanish-speaking parents, I did it with siblings. So it's the parent, the sibling, and doing that kind of pyramidal training. So I still kind of stayed in the same topic, but it was a different kind of area for sure.